And we're live. So today on Lifestyle Medicine, we've got Corinne Welder. So Corinne, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. When we got on our call not that long ago, and we kind of were talking a little bit about your background and then some of the concepts found in Chinese medicine, there were some cool threads that I wanted to jump in with you about. But just as a basic orientation for the audience, can you just kind of give your titles, what you do, so people have a framework?
Sure, yeah. Back in Austin, Texas in 2009, I started studying acupuncture. And at the same time, I started with my meditation school. So those two things have pretty much been woven together throughout my time as a practitioner.
Yeah.
So I practiced in Austin for a couple years. And then, in 2 weeks' notice, I put everything in storage, got a car, drove to California, and lived at my meditation retreat center for a couple years. And I was working with a group of practitioners there and my spiritual teacher, and we were really diving into the energetic body the entire time we were there. Because in school, in Chinese medicine school, you're given the map, you're given the theory and the points, and
Right.
You memorize the shit out of everything.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's a lot of memorization. But, so you have the map, and it gives you the direction, it gives you like theories and ideas and principles. But then, just like you have a map and then you go to the destination, then you get to experience the trees and the birds and,
Right.
the water. It's a very different experience when you actually go inside and experience it. And so that's basically what we were doing, building a relationship to the energetic body and the different organ systems and the different points, and and kind of developing techniques around that. So I did that for a couple of years. And as soon as I moved to California, I was like, I'm not going back to Texas. I love it here.
Yeah.
So I moved to San Francisco, I guess at the end of 2016, and then started practicing energy work because every state has a different licensing requirement. So I wasn't allowed to practice acupuncture in California. So in 2018, last year, I started doing all the things I needed to do to get my California acupuncture license. So I'm about halfway through with that.
Cool.
Hoping to take the board next summer and then be a practicing acupuncturist by sometime next year.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, similar threads. Obviously, we both have studied Chinese medicine. My background is in that as well. Just as a quick side note, just curious, what did, Austin, Texas, I've heard is pretty awesome. So what was the...
It is pretty awesome.
Yeah. So what was the big difference between like leaving there, which I hear is pretty awesome, to come to California? What was the selling point that made you want to leave?
Well, I grew up in Texas, so I was there for 30 years.
Okay, gotcha. It's home base.
Every place is different for different people, but I like the mythology of, I think it's the rubber tree. You plant a rubber tree in a small pot and it only grows 3 feet tall. You plant it in the forest and it grows 50 feet tall. And it's just like Texas was just a small pot for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't really able to grow there. So
Fair enough. Well, when we had shifting gears into the thing that you had kind of brought up to me when we had our call prior to this interview, you were kind of talking about the concept of Jing, vitality, longevity, and these threads in Chinese medicine, and that you were that was fresh on your mind and you were passionate about these things, and it's been a pretty consistent topic, it sounds like, with the people that you're working with. So I do want to get into that, but for obviously the Chinese medicine people that are listening to this are going to be like, of course, Jing, and it's longevity, it's all kind of, it's very second nature for us, but for the whole slew of people that are listening to this are like, what the hell is Jing? Can you kind of just lay out this little board game for people so they kind of know the pieces that they're playing with, and then we can kind of get into it?
Yeah, sure. Jing is, so if you've had acupuncture and you're working on, so I backtrack a little bit. I do a lot of work with fertility, and so this is why I'm thinking a lot about Jing.
Yeah.
So Jing is basically the quintessence of sexual energy. It is stored in your eggs and in your sperm, and it is passed down to your children. So Jing is actually the foundation of the physical and energetic body. It's a very foundational energy. So it's not physical, it's energetic, but it's passed down to you from your parents, generation after generation after generation. Yep. And it's basically, it's super foundational. So it's vitality, it's life force, it's it's like your bank account. So unfortunately, everybody's born with a different bank account, depending on how wealthy your parents are and how much you're going to get.
Right.
And it's the same thing with Jing and the amount of this foundational energy that you get from your parents. So you can get a lot of it, and then you're going to have a very strong foundation. So if you have high quality Jing, then you're going to be healthy. You're going to have a lot of vitality. You're going to be energetic. And basically I say it's like the fuel in your car. It helps you go places, and you can go wherever you want, but it's just the thing that's going to keep you going.
Absolutely.
And so in Chinese medicine theory, you're born with a certain amount of it. You have a ton of it when you're a baby. You're just like full of Jing. And then as you age, you kind of use it up. You use up that bank account. Unfortunately, you can't put money back in the bank account.
Right.
And then, the theory is that when you die, it's because you've run out of Jing. And so the Taoists, practicing thousands of years ago, wanted to cultivate Jing both for health and vitality, but also for longevity. It's because it's this essential force of life. It's this life that's passed down generation to generation. It's what has kept humanity, around for so long. Is this force of life, and it's also something, even though you can't add necessarily to your bank account, it's something that you can cultivate. And so I speak about it a lot because if you are someone who's wanting to have a child, and you cultivate your Jing, you cultivate your sexual energy, you cultivate this foundational force of life in you and your partner, then your eggs and your sperm are higher quality. And then when those come together to create your child's going to get a stronger force of life. And that is going to affect them for their whole life and their children, so it's super important. And it's not something that a lot of people know about or even talk about.
Yeah, and I'd love to add some things to that. So that's a great framework. Absolutely. Like, I agree with everything you said. And nothing in Western medicine totally, or science totally correctly 100% translates to Chinese medicine. But for the people listening to, it's very similar to our genetics. The imprint of like having good genes. It's kind of interesting that Jing and genes sound kind of similar, Yeah. So, but that's kind of what Corinne's talking about, is that piece of that. Yes. That blueprint, the stronger that is, right. And then it can be nourished. And that's kind of cool. When you were talking and just the stuff when I've read about Jing and, when I'm talking about it with people, the whole, what do you want to call it? The area of study around epigenetics, talking about how our lifestyle, our environment can actually affect our genes and gene expression. So I think that there's some ties to that too when you're talking about nourishing your Jing, right? It's like, what are we doing at a lifestyle level, right? What are we doing with our activity, with our body? What are we doing with the foods we eat, the air we breathe, the water we take in? Those things can nourish Jing, but it is a really important piece. I think that it's overlooked quite a bit. I mean, I think Qi, at least in Chinese medicine school, Qi is talked about quite a bit. Qi, right? Like, how strong is the person's Qi? Yeah. How are you moving the Qi? Is there is there Qi in this channel? Is there Qi here? But, my teacher, I don't know if I mentioned to you, I work with Lillian Bridges, the face reader out of...
oh, yeah, you told me that.
Yeah, out of Seattle. So one of the things she said is, she's like, Jing is, without Jing, you don't have Qi. She said, so Jing is like one of the most important things to deal with.
Right.
So in the context of, this larger idea, now that people have a framework, what are you seeing with people that the fertility, people that you're working with and helping people, in that area, what are you seeing in working with people? And then what are some of the things that you do to actually, quote unquote, nourish Jing, or to cultivate it in the context of the way you're exploring it?
Yeah, so to bring it more to experiential for people, because we've been talking a lot of theory, experientially, it feels like vitality. It feels like aliveness. It feels like fullness. It's like you wake up in the morning and you're like, like, I got this, like, life is good. Right. I feel life flowing through me. You could even call it creative energy. So you feel alive, you feel great, you feel good, you feel full. you're not exhausted and sick and, so that's how you can experience, like, think about it experientially. So the way that you work with it, so I like what you talk about with the epigenetics, because I was thinking about this recently too. A lot of people who are having fertility issues, they're tracking their cycle and they're doing all this stuff, but they're like super exhausted and they're like,
they're wiped out.
I wish I didn't even have to have sex. I wish I could just use a turkey baster. And it's like, okay, there's something a little bit off in the way that we're thinking about this here, because fertility is just a way to look at your own health. It's just an essential part of your own health. If you are not fertile, then something's happening in your body. As a woman, your cycle is regulated by your hypothalamus, which is very sensitive to environmental factors. And if you think about yourself as a cave woman or a caveman, if your body's super stressed out, you don't have enough food, like animals are trying to eat you all the time, it's like that's, your body's not going to be like, let's make a baby now. Your body's like, okay, I got to reserve my resources. It's not time to make a baby.
Right.
However, you have plenty of food, you have plenty of rest, you feel safe. I think that's a big part too. Then your body's like, okay, great, we can make a child now. And so these environmental factors play a huge piece of it. And in our Western world, where it's just like, go, 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 run, run, run. You're not valued as a human unless you're producing, and you're filling every second of your day with like busyness. And that leads to exhaustion. That leads to your body not having any resources to support and nourish your Jing. You're just in this fight or flight mode. Okay, get through the day, like survival mode.
Yep.
So you're not going into the rest mode where your body is like, okay, I can actually refill, I can actually replenish, I can restore. And so that's the first thing that I have to address with people is it's that important. Okay, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here.
Please do. The
yin yang symbol, everybody knows what that looks like, but it's not a static symbol, it's dynamic. It's yin and yang are constantly dancing and moving.
Yep.
And we see this in our lives as, yang becomes yin when daytime becomes nighttime, when summer becomes winter, and yin becomes yang when nighttime becomes daytime and winter becomes summer. And so we're in this constantly moving in these cycles. And you even see it like in the stock market, it goes up and it goes down, like everything is cycles in our lives. And yet we're constantly trying to hold on to the yang phase in our society. Yang, 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 go, go, go.
Yeah.
There's no value, there's no time, there's no space to have the contraction phase, to go into the yin phase. And what does the yin do? Well, it replenishes, it restores. It's like sleeping at night. If you didn't sleep for 3 days, you wouldn't be good, And so we need that time in our space in our lives to have that deep inner restoration, the digestion, the inner reflection. Okay, like what's meaningful to me? Like why am I doing this in my life? Why do I want to have a baby? Like connecting to yourself. How am I feeling? Why am I in so much pain? I think that sometimes people don't want to go into that phase because it hurts, especially if we've been neglecting it for a long time.
Well said. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So first we have to, allow that to happen. We have to like stop being so exhausted in some way or some form. Because, first get out of the constant sympathetic fight or flight mode. And then, once you're out of that phase, well, then you can start to, feel your body, connect to yourself, connect to your center. How do I feel? What do I need? Do I have energy? Do I not have energy?
Yeah.
Is it blocked? Is it not blocked? And so I focus a lot on the pelvic center, the energetic center in the pelvis, because that's where your ovaries are. That's where, your testes are. And so it's, that's where you're going to make the baby. That's like the creative center, the creative.
It's important.
Yeah. And it's, It's also the center that connects down into the earth. It's like power, it's grounded. It's called the hara in the Japanese tradition.
Yep.
And martial artists learn how to ground in that center so that they can be powerful and strong. And so it's super important for people to start connecting with what's happening in their pelvis. And it's, well, first and foremost, we are totally in our heads all the time. So people are like, wait, what do you mean? My body? I have a body?
Yeah, it's very true.
And then secondly, we have so many issues in our society around sexuality. There's shame, and then you don't talk about it. And like at the very essence, sex is about regenerating life. It's generative life principle. It's about creating new life. Sex is the way that you can also regenerate your Jing, because Jing is sexual energy. If you do it in the right way. And this is what the Taoists were working on thousands of years ago.
Right.
They would use sexuality practices to then nourish their qi. Qi governs all of the functions in the body. And then from there to nourish their spirit or their shen to bring clarity of spirit. But it always started at the root, at the base, at this vitality level.
Yep.
And so, I think it's a big missing piece today of first connecting there and then, working on it. There's so many blockages around it. There's so much shame around sexuality. It's either not talked about, we can't talk about it in school, you don't learn about it when you're growing up. You kind of have to figure it out, and it's weird and it's awkward, and you don't know if you're doing it right, and you don't know how to communicate. And so you learn from porn, which isn't a good way to learn at all because it's hyper masculinized, and you don't get the deep connection and the deep feminine opening which is needed to cultivate Jing and sexual energy and vitality.
Right.
So I said a lot. Is there anything you want to?
No, I mean, there's a ton there, obviously, right? There's so many areas. I mean, the things that I want to interject. So I, again, agreed, Jing is really important. It's so critical to nourish it, take care of it, not overuse it, but also to actively, what I really appreciate about what you're saying is actively nourish Jing, actually take the time and realize that there's a pathway to do that. And one of the key ideas, you said right at the beginning of your Jing spiel, you said it's very closely related to creativity as well, like creative urges and creative drives. And that's exactly right, because sexual energy and creative energy are very closely linked because they're both creationary, at their core. And then one of the key threads that I've really liked exploring in the last couple years has been this idea too of people, Chinese medicine school, we hear a lot about people overusing their Jing. Too much sex, or emotionless sex that isn't not connected with the person, or the CEO who's burning the candles from both ends, who's or a mom who's working 80 hours a week to juggle all these things and not eating. You can burn up your Jing, and that can cause disease. And then this thread that I've gotten into dialogue with one of my teachers, Lillian, she talked about the underuse of Jing, not using your gifts, sitting. If you are we all have gifts, and we're all talented in some area, even if it's not the way we traditionally think of talent, but we all have something that we're good at. There's something in us that has a strength. And so one of the things she talks about is she says these people she sees that are getting sick too are underusing their Jing. They're actually not expressing, and they're just sitting there complacently apathetic in life. And it's that doesn't work either. So just complete conservation and complete sitting still doesn't necessarily cultivate Jing. You have to be using what you've been given, but not overusing it, right? It's very Taoist, right? That straight but not straight. Totally the middle way. It's God. But
the way that is not defined.
right. It's very Zen and enigmatic. So, okay. So going back kind of to this with the Jing, I know why, and obviously as we're talking, why this is important. But when you were saying, you want to you want to switch modes between your nervous system. Talk a little bit about people, if they don't understand this, why is it important to slow down? Why is it important to relax? Why is it actually important not to just be going 24/7, 365?
Well, it's that yin and yang cycle again. If you keep going in the yang and you never consciously give yourself the yin phase, you're just going to burn out. Your body's going to be like, okay, done.
Yep.
And then you get adrenal fatigue or whatever it is that you want to call it.
Yeah.
Adrenal fatigue, the controversial term, but
right.
There's something that breaks down in your system if you don't give yourself that time. Also, it's just this like inner and outer movement. You know, you're talking about your gifts and your gifts to the world and creative energy and bringing yourself into the world and creating, being a creative person in the world, you know, actively creating in life. So in order to do that, you have to have times of inner reflection. You have to have times of digestion. There has to be times of realignment, you know, so it's like moving out into the world, doing this yang phase, having this activity, and then having this inner reflection, you know, digestion, and then moving back out, you know, and it's just the way of life. It's kind of what we're given. It's the blueprint that we're given as humanity. That's what the earth does. You know, every winter, everything
Correct.
goes deep inside, and then in the spring it blossoms again, you know, and then it's the daytime, you know, everything blossoms and we're super active. And at the night we're sleeping and a lot's happening during our sleep. If we don't get enough sleep, then everything breaks down in the body. And so we can consciously do this as human beings, you know, since we're conscious beings, and we can give ourselves these phases. And I think that's an essential part of being a creative person and having a creative, purposeful life.
Absolutely. It's a great answer. And as you're talking, that's the thing that I think that's really important to remember in this, is that I think sometimes when people hear about Chinese medicine or longevity principles or Jing, these ideas, people, for whatever reason, even though it makes sense to me and probably you, is that this is applicable to everybody. Like there's no person that gets away from this. So I think that's a key point to remember, is that regardless of your walk of life, whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a Chinese medicine practitioner, a mom, whatever your thing is, I feel like it's important for people to realize that even outside of the context of fertility, you know, that's a piece, right? If you want to be fertile, you have to conserve Jing and nourish it. But even if you're not, if you just want to be here for your kids, and you're not looking to make babies, but you just want to have any kind of longevity, this process is fully applicable to that demographic of people as well. So I think that's what I think it's always good to point out. It's like, it's good for everybody to slow down and take care of your Jing. With the people, I have a question for you. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, because it sounds like you dialogue with this pretty consistently, and it's a thread to what you're doing. When I've had people ask me this question, and I kind of have my take on it, but like I said, I would like to hear yours. People have asked me, some people that have very high libido, some people have very low libido. There's people that are kind of in between. And people have come to me like, well, if I have, you know, people have asked me like, well, Gray, if I have a low libido, does that mean I have low Jing, or that I'm going to die sooner or something? So there's like that question of longevity. And then like that question. And then what do you tell people in terms of, you know, if sexual energy is kind of a sign of vitality and stuff, but people are naturally low libido, how do you navigate that terrain when you're talking to people? If that's come up at all, I would love to hear your thoughts on that process of like, you know, low libido, high libido, sex drive, creativity, and how those all kind of link.
I think low libido can be from so many different factors. You know, there is having sexual energy, but it's blocked. Yes. And I think this is really common. And it comes back to how we view it in society. A lot of times there was a time when the person was 5 and they were freely expressing their sexuality with their friend, and an adult came in. It was very shameful, and then like something shut down. You know, that happens a lot. I've seen that a lot for people, you know, because I also like to dive really deep and see like, okay, what's the source of this issue? So that happens a lot of times. You know, maybe somebody's afraid of their sexuality. Maybe they don't trust their partner. Maybe they had a traumatic event in their past. And all of these things it doesn't mean that you don't have Jing or sexual energy, but it can be like it's blocked, or it's hurting, or it's not trusting, or it doesn't want to come out, or, you know, again, maybe you're just exhausted and you just, you know, need rest, you know, like you just get enough sleep and then your libido can come back. Yeah, so I don't think that it relates to necessarily having Jing or not enough Jing. And then there's the way to have sex to conserve your Jing. So you talked about it a little bit, but I want to bring it back a little bit more or more. So there's a way that you can have sex that can use up your Jing. And then there's a way that you can have sex that can restore and regenerate your Jing and sexuality and sexual energy and creative energy. So the way to have sex to, use up your Jing is basically porn style sex. Yep. It's like the wham bam, thank you ma'am. A lot of ejaculation, because Jing is stored in your sperm. So if you're ejaculating all the time, then you're just like leaving your Jing out, you're just like letting it go out everywhere. And if you're wanting to make a baby, obviously you're going to want to ejaculate, but you can have sex when your partner, when the woman is not in her, not ovulating. And I'm just going to like reformulate my thoughts here. Yeah. So you can have sex.
I hear you because there's so many, I totally feel you though, because there's so many different directions to go here. So I feel you. Yeah. I'm with you though. Okay. Yeah. So you can have sex when your partner, when the woman is ovulating. Yeah. If you're the man and ejaculate at that point, if you're wanting to have a baby. And then when she's not ovulating, you can have sex and not ejaculate. And for the man, it's like, well, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to have sex and not ejaculate? Right. But you can have sex in a particular way that is super deep, and you can actually have full body orgasms. We actually call it energetic orgasms or etheric orgasms as a man when you are in this deep pleasure state with the woman. Yep. And not ejaculate. And like I do this with my partner, and when he doesn't ejaculate, it's like he's full of life force and vitality afterwards, versus like the refractory phase where you have to like fall asleep and guy passes out, right? He's just
it's like 100% different, like something in him is like, man, I wanted to ejaculate, come on, that's why we did this, but then it's like that vitality is still flowing inside of him and still moving inside of him. It didn't leave his body, and it's very, very noticeable for me as his partner and for him too, when he does or doesn't ejaculate. And so, you can have sex and build up that sexual energy and then not release it. Right. And you can have sex in a way that creates flow inside of you. So there's sex that can be really grasping and very mental, and it's grasping and grasping and grasping, and it's tight. And you're grasping for the orgasm, you're grasping for the release, and that can actually, like, that doesn't create sexual energy. That doesn't build vitality. The way that you have sex that does build vitality is sex that is opening. The sex that allows flow, sex that allows movement. Right. As the woman, you have to be able to trust your partner. You have to be able to be held by your partner. You have to feel that your partner can meet you and match you in any place that you are, whether it's you need something very soft or whether you need something very like deep, like, maybe you need something really violent. It's like, as a woman, you need all of these, the feminine flows, the feminine moves, the feminine needs different things at different times. And when the feminine feels met and held by her partner, then she can open, and she opens more deeply and more deeply and more deeply. And then you get to these really deep energetic states of where you start to feel that vitality, that sexual energy, that regenerative force. And then sometimes I feel it like almost like an infinity sign, from the belly to the heart between the partners, and energy's just moving, and you meet with your partner at this really deep level, like something merges in you at this foundational level. Yeah. And energy starts moving between you. And sometimes I even like to, hold my hands with my partner and then connect our feet. And you can feel the energy flowing. And there's, energy centers in your lips. And you can feel that, when you're kissing your partner. And so you get to this really deep state where energy is moving and vitality is moving. And plus you also feel this really deep connection to your partner. In Chinese medicine, we have the deepest state of the qi is the Xiao Yan, which is heart kidney.
Yep.
And this is where
I was just about to jump into that. Yeah, right.
You can access that state with your partner. It also creates this deep, energetic, foundational relationship with your partner, where something feels really solid between you two. And, even when you have kids, your kids can rest on that feeling of strength between you two because you're connected, you're one at that deep level.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to toss some things in here. So this is a great topic because I think it's, I love all the things that you're saying. And I think it's really important to keep these things in mind. I think, like you said, in this culture, there's a lot of shame and there's a lot of repression around sexual energy. Americans are very uptight sexually, collectively. So I think one of the things too, like, simplifying some of this too, is that basically, in a sense, like in layman's terms, having sex with someone that you love and that sees you fully is typically collectively better for your Jing than it is, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, the empty, just casual, emotionless sex that doesn't have any connection. And, one of the things that I was going to bring up, because people have talked about this for a long time, we've all heard the term sexual healing, where people have, even if it's a chance encounter, but they both really link and see each other and they both value and respect each other in that space, in that moment. People will have, sex and they come out of it and they'll stay up all night talking and they just feel like something has been opened from the inside. And that's sort of the marker, at least in my estimation and understanding, is when Jing is being nourished, when you feel like there is life coursing through you afterwards, where you don't feel depleted. That's one of the hallmark signs of if your Jing has been exercised appropriately, right? It's been like stimulated and your gifts have actually been stirred up and not, repressed or put down or stagnated. Because I know people, and I'm sure you do too, who have had sex with somebody and there was almost a toxic response. Either they felt, maybe they felt they were being used or not fully seen, or they feel completely empty and hollow afterwards, where they're like, why did I do that? Why did I just do this act with this person who really doesn't mean anything to me, and vice versa probably. So there's this kind of, thread there that I think it's important to touch on that. And just to interject, and I've shared this story on the podcast one other time, but, when I was 19, I lost my dad in a car accident, and I didn't grieve. I cried once, like the day I found out, for a few minutes, then I kind of froze up and didn't cry. And then the following Thursday when I eulogized him, I cried that night for about 30 minutes. And then for 2 years, I didn't cry at all. And the way it manifested was complete lack of, I could not sexually perform at 21. Like, it was just, my body was, I didn't know what was going on. And really what it boiled down to was me crying and getting the emotional sludge out, and everything returned to normal. But it took me a long time to figure that out. I had to see a number of people, and I had some very lucky encounters with some mentors who were like, look, this is what's happening, But I think it kind of points to this thing of, if that blocks up, right? If something happens to us, trauma, it's part of why it made me think about what you were saying. If we have trauma early in life where the sexual energy kind of locks down, right? Mm-hmm. So I've noticed with my own personal energetic system that grief, if I don't process grief and I don't get tears out on a relatively consistent basis, it actually compromises my, sexual energy. Like, it just does. It's not true for everybody, but for me, that's definitely true. Have you seen similar type things in people? How does it manifest differently, or from what you've seen? Like, if there's trauma, like, what's that look like in other people?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna reflect back to you, like, oh wow, that's very Chinese medicine, and that the lung energy generates the kidney energy, and so when the lung relates to grief, and when the lung is blocked, then it can't nourish the kidney. Absolutely. And I've actually worked a lot with that in fertility, of getting the lung energy down into the kidney. So another way is to actually just breathe deep into your belly. If you're wanting to bring more life force, more energy into your pelvis, you can just breathe, breathe down. Yeah. But the question was, what was the question again? How do I see trauma in people? Yeah, like trauma, because I think that piece, when that was a thread, kind of like a light went off when you said that. It's been true for me, but I know trauma, when we have trauma in our life, it's going to affect everybody a little different. Like, it's not going to hit the same system. Some people who I know who have been severely depressed,
supremely sad for long periods of time have no sexual performance issues whatsoever. That's just not where they get hit, right? There's another area that gets compromised. So I'm just curious, in what you've seen in relationship to trauma and sexuality. Like, what have you seen in terms of how it manifests? What are some people's experiences? What have you seen?
Yeah, as you said, it manifests in a lot of different ways. Oftentimes what trauma does it will shut some part of us down, and it can be sexually, it can be like in the pelvic energy, it can be in a different part of us. It can shut some part of us down. It can create blockage. It can also create an ejection of a part of us. Like some part of us is like, oh, it's not safe to be here. I'm just gonna boom, and kind of leave. It creates a disconnection from some part of ourselves. It creates some sort of imprint. And so we're either, shut down, blocked, or disconnected in some form or fashion. And so the way that I work with trauma is, it's actually through a technique that I've learned from my meditation school called IST. And you would basically go deep into a meditative space and you start to move through that trauma. And you're moving through it to help it flow, to unblock it, but also essentially to reconnect to that part of you that was lost through the experience. So whether that part of you was the young child that was super open and innocent and, excited about life, and that part of you just got shut down in that experience when you felt shame when some adult walked in the room, or, whether it's the, for a woman who, is had some sexual trauma, it can be something of her feminine that shuts down, something that doesn't feel safe in the feminine, that doesn't trust, that doesn't feel like she can access that part of herself. I do this women's group, we call it Fertility, once a month here in the Bay Area, and I was talking about sexual energy, and a lot of women said, I don't feel safe, when I build up my sexual energy and I feel that aliveness flowing through me, I don't feel safe when I go outside.
Fair enough.
And so it's like constantly working at that level. And so I'll go into one of my other passions, which is feminine energy and helping women reconnect to the feminine. So you can call it past life. If you don't believe in past life, you can just say that it was passed down to us, cellularly, women to women. But every single woman that I've worked with to reconnect with some feminine power, to reconnect with sexual energy, has some sort of trauma. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be seen in this way. I don't feel safe. I feel afraid. Because at some point in history, and we had, I guess, the point in history that comes to my mind very often was during the Inquisition, 400 years. It wasn't just women. A lot of people were burned, and it was initially started to get rid of the Cathars. But, any woman who was powerful, who was sexual, who was a healer, who had knowledge, was burned, or tortured or raped. And all of that was to break the feminine. And so every single woman that I work with to reconnect with the feminine, and I often feel it, there's a lot of way the feminine manifests, but I often feel this particular feminine in the pelvis, in the belly, in the forces below. There's also energetic centers that go down into the earth. It's kind of like this deep earth, powerful feminine. There's just so much fear around it. And so it's always working at that level, and also helping women to reconnect with those forces, because I've had to deal with this for myself too, and so that's why I'm so passionate about it. There's always so much fear, don't want to be seen. And then finally something clicked. I was like, you know what? These deep feminine forces, the things that I'm connected to, the things that I'm reconnecting to inside of myself, Like, that's where the magic is. That's where I'm going to heal people. That's where my passion is. That's where the mystery is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've been spinning my wheels trying to get stuff working from the masculine way, and it's just, there's no movement, you know? And then when I finally was like, okay, I'm just going to flip the switch and I'm going to like be brave and courageous and just do it, you know, like, so, I don't know, something just changed inside of me. And I was like, I have to reconnect with this. Yeah. And I think so many women experience this, and I really want to help other women also reconnect to this inside of themselves, because I think it's essential. It's essential for women. It's essential for everybody. You know, like, it's essential for the earth. Like, I don't know if the earth would be, like, the environment would be so much, you know, turmoil if people were more connected to the feminine in this way. And it also feels like there's just this general movement where it's coming back, it's rising, more people are connecting to it, more people are feeling safe. And so that's another way, you know, it ties into fertility, but it also is its own thing. And it's another thing that I work with a lot.
Yeah. When you were, you know, just backpedaling a little bit, you said right at the beginning of that, when you started to talk about this, you said that people are kind of, you, through this process, was it called IST, you said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
inner space technique.
Okay, so they go back and they're, you know, kind of activating the trauma, or in a sense reliving it, or going through it again and stirring it up. So, you know, outside of the context of, let's say, working with a practitioner, is there a way to kind of open that door? Say, like, you know, say I got off this podcast and I'm like, okay, I want to kind of self-assess trauma a little bit. I know some areas in my life where maybe I was traumatized in this way. You know, are there some baseline fundamental principles or ideas that people can be guided to sort of look at their stuff in a more functional way that can actually get them moving in the right direction? Or do you see it strictly as a process that's, you know, should be guided by a practitioner at all times? Like, what are your thoughts on just, you know, you kind of working on your own stuff in the way that you can, or being guided? Like, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say I'm not sure. I've only done it the one way.
Yeah,
I've only done it the way, where it's guided. And, you know, I've guided a lot of people. I've been guided myself. And there's something about having someone with you that really changes things for me.
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
It's like there's a space that's created, you know, around the experience. Like, there's a depth that you go into through the meditative space. And then you have someone who's present with you. And for me, I've been able to go really, really deep in places that I would have never been able to access myself by having someone be there with me. And essentially it's about the opening, you know, it's like, you're not going through it just to go through it again. You're going through it to allow something to open and to release, to allow yourself to reconnect to that part of you that was lost, and to integrate the experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because it seems like, I mean, this fundamental idea that we're kind of circling around is that if we have some kind of blockage in the sexual energy, in our creativity, in our vitality, fundamentally life, I mean, we don't express life as well as we could. And quality of life goes down something fierce. I mean, that's really the bottom line. I mean, I know people who have struggled with fertility for a long time, numerous people in my life who have struggled with it. And that's a huge struggle to have that be, you know, on the plate. And then when people aren't, I would say, when they're not looking to make a baby and they're just looking to live their life, but be fully expressed, use their gifts, feel that they're being acknowledged in the world, when that's not happening, that feels pretty awful too. Yeah. So again, it kind of goes back to that thing, like whether you're trying to fundamentally create life, you know, in a baby or not, this is a process and dynamic that I think is really important for most people to look at, if not all, on some level. Yeah. Well, what have you seen, I guess, in the context of this? So when you're working with people and you're guiding them through this process, you know, what do you see as you say you unearth the trauma, right? And you're kind of guiding them through the medicine style that you do. You know, what does the other side of this look like? What do you see in terms of movement of people, their expression, maybe, you know, fertility? Like what's some of the end game scenarios that you've seen?
Sure. I was working with someone really recently, and This actually wasn't for fertility. She had sacrum issues, but it's kind of similar. You know, your sacrum's in the pelvis, and
Yeah.
she was, she's kind of a very timid person. And when I was working on her sacrum, I could feel this like fire in her belly, you know, like a tiger in her belly. And I was like, wow, you have a lot of ferocity there. And, you know, did you know that? No, you know, and so there was something like the pain in the sacrum was from this like intense holding down, holding something in. She felt like she had to present herself in a certain way, and she could only let certain things move through. So I've often seen a relationship between the pelvis and the voice, you know, allowing things to move through your voice to express. And, you know, did the session with her, but it was really like towards the end when we were talking, and I was, you know, trying to help her feel like you have all of this in your belly and you can let it move. And then all of a sudden it just clicked for her. And then, oh,
the light goes off,
and then
right?
Something happened. It wasn't just mentally, it's something clicked in her energetically. Oh, I don't have to hold myself in. Oh, I don't have to, you know, present myself this way, this way, this way. And then all of a sudden it was just movement, you know, from her pelvis into her system. Her eyes got brighter. You could feel like the vitality flowing in her system. And I was like, wow, do you feel that? And she said, yes, I feel the energy moving. And so, you know, sometimes it's just a realization, but, you know, this is like, you know, for all people, not necessarily people wanting to have a baby, is like just this realization that you don't have to control everything that's coming out of your mouth, and you can let that tiger or vitality or whatever it is that you felt like you weren't able to, let it move, and then all of a sudden energizing, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you see this process, and I mean, you're watching it as a clinician, as a practitioner, you're seeing something change. You're like, wow, the person's voice has shifted. They seem more expressed. Do your patients equally feel that, or is it, are they aware of it when it happens? Are they kind of hip to the idea, to the notion? Can they feel that, yeah, wow, something's different?
Yeah, I'm very much, I guess one of the central things that I like to do is help people connect to their bodies and to themselves. So I'm never just telling them anything. I'm like, okay, I'm telling you this so that you can have the experience for yourself. Maybe the way I'm expressing it isn't the way that you experience it, but I'm just trying to get you into the experience so that you can experience this yourself. I think it's super key, and it makes people more empowered. It brings the power back to them when they can feel their body, feel what's happening inside of them, feel when the energy is flowing, feel where it's blocked, you know, and then you get to then you get to have agency, you know, you get to be aware of what's happening in your system. I did in the meetup I did last Saturday, we connected to our wombs, you know, like, okay, how is your womb feeling? What does your womb feel like? You know, like when we connected to each of our wombs and everyone else, you know, everyone else's wombs, just to have that experience of having that connection. Everyone's felt a little different. You know, one person felt grief from a miscarriage, you know, and another one felt shy, you know, and there's like space to have that experience, but just to connect, because then you can see when something starts to go off. You know, this is the essential preventative medicine, when you can feel inside yourself, okay, something doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to look at this. I need to address it in some way, you know, and your pelvis, and I'm speaking more as a woman, but it's probably also for a man, you know, your pelvis, your womb, your vagina, you know, that like when you're connected to that and something's off, okay, well, something's not right here. Maybe there's a boundary that has been crossed. You know, maybe you're not expressing yourself. Maybe like the way you're moving through life isn't quite right. You know, like something's off here.
Yep.
Maybe, you know, maybe it's diet. Maybe I'm eating too much sugar, and so I'm getting these different, you know, but when you're aware of what's happening there, like is something shut down, is something cranky, is something, you know, like off, then you can start to address it before it becomes a physical disease. And I think that's super important. So I'm always trying to get people I work with connected into their bodies.
Yeah. And it's definitely true, excuse me, for men, for a lot of men that I talk to, and it's been true for myself. You know, I come from a pretty extensive martial art background, and I focused on a lot of the, you know, internal martial art systems. I teach Tai Chi. And so one of the key threads that I noticed right from the beginning with the internal arts that are just very much about keeping your awareness down in the lower dantian, right? The lower abdomen, keeping it moving there. I mean, that was especially through my 20s when I had a lot of weird stuff with my dad, and I had a lot of grief and weird identity stuff I was figuring out about what's my life going to look like without my dad, and who am I? And it was just a weird time. And I mean, the thing that kind of grounded me back into baseline sexual expression was martial arts, because it kept my mind in my belly, basically. I was very easy for my heart to get very hot, and for me to just be in my head a lot and overthinking things. And that was the exhaustion. You know, I had to consciously kind of bring things back down. And that kind of brings me to the next question, because what I've seen in, you know, my interactions with clients, people that I work with, the things that I'm seeing, people that typically, well, let me lay out this idea first, because I think you're hip to it, but for the people listening, that, you know, the Jing, Qi, and Shen, you know, our constitutional strength, our essence, then we have our energy, and then our spirit at the top. And that platform, right, Jing is like the bottom of the pyramid. It's the biggest base, Qi's a little bit smaller, and then Shen is the top of the triangle or of the pyramid. And when I've seen that be upside down, where people are all in their head, they have a little bit of Qi and they're wiped out. They have no energy for sex, right? They have no energy for anything. They're just so burnt out. There's very little room for sexual activity, whether that's creative drive or the actual physical act, or their libido gets low, right? They get very depleted. So it kind of got me thinking about what you said about your meditation background. Have you seen that when people's minds calm down, that the sexual reservoir starts to fill back up, like when they can get out of their head and start putting things back lower? What have you seen with that? I mean, I've seen that, but I'm curious to know, because we all attract different people. So
Sure. Yeah, I've actually seen it a lot in my work with people. I recently did a class on empowered birth, and basically these women were about to give birth. They were really scared. You know, like, I don't know if I can do this. And I was like, okay, the fear is in your head. It's at the level of your mind. I can't, I'm afraid. Basically, it's all these ideas that you have about what's happening. It's the story about what's happening. It's a story about the experience. It's not the actual experience.
It's like the hamster in the wheel, right? Like just
yeah. It's just your idea of what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, and it has nothing to do with the actual thing itself. And so I got, gave them that context. The fear is in your head. It's not the experience. And I got them to go down into their bellies, and I helped them. So I had hands on their hips.
Sure.
I would, breathe down into your belly. I had them get into their belly. And as soon as they did, boom, silent mind.
Yeah.
Silent mind. Down into their belly, silent mind. And then they also felt the power in their belly. I was like, your body knows how to give birth. You are one of billions of women who have given birth over the history of humans. You know how to give birth. Your body knows how to do this. Like, go into the experience. Go into the flow of the experience. It's going to be the most intense thing that you've ever experienced, but it's force and it's power and it's life, and your body knows how to do this. And so go into the place where you know how to do this, which is in your pelvis. Your brain doesn't know how. No,
it's very true. And I have to toss this story in, because my wife did a home birth, and I was the first person to catch my daughter. So when she came out, like, her, my hands were the first thing that she touched. It was beautiful. It was awesome. Amazing experience. My wife, though, is very, very yin. She's very soft. She's very traditionally feminine, and just, she moves slowly, and she's just, very graceful. And, because I'm a first-time parent and I just didn't know, and I'm a guy, I remember kind of going through that process. I'm like, she wants to do a home birth with me, which means no pain meds, no anything. And I remember thinking, like, I just don't know if she's going to be able to handle this given her personality. And I was floored at how her body just took over. I mean, she became like a different person. It was like, where's my wife? Like, whoever this person is like not her. I mean, it was her, but it was crazy to watch her body go from that mode of, I'm in pain, to just silent, fully in her body. She stopped talking. And when she stopped talking, I was like, oh shit, she's in her body, because her body is about to do this. And it was amazing. You're absolutely right. I mean, the body does know what to do. I mean, it was kind of remarkable to see how true that statement really is. It really made me kind of reframe, and I made me kind of be like, I should give my wife more credit. Like I kind of was like, in a way, I was underestimating her, and I shouldn't have. her body took care of it. But it was, but you're right. I mean, that's exactly right. The body does know what to do. That's a key point to remember. I think people forget about in the context of a baby and in life, right? The body.
Yeah, and there's something about resting in the pelvis where, your mind goes silent. You're grounded, you're connected, you're alert, you're aware.
Yep.
Just like if you think about the martial artist, and you're centered, and like it's a good place to be. The mind is a hamster wheel. It has no connection to anything that's happening.
Yeah. It has, I mean, it's like, right, it's functional. It helps you pay your bills and do your day-to-day stuff. We need it. But man, to live there is exhausting for men and women. It's very tiring. It doesn't, there's not a lot of longevity or sustainability there.
Yeah, you're right. We need it. Of course, we wouldn't have it otherwise, but it's not connectable. You can't connect from your mind. You can connect from your body, you can connect from your spirit or your shen, but not your mind.
Absolutely. Well, Corinne, in this, we've jumped through some pretty cool hoops through this conversation. But if you were, in kind of like closing and wrapping up this whole big picture that we have about Jing, sexuality, vitality, longevity, fertility, women, if they're looking to make a baby, or if people want to just live with more vitality, if you had parting words for the audience in terms of how people can embark on this process in the simplest way, how do we start putting like baby steps in the right direction? What would be the kind of takeaway thing that you would tell people to begin doing if they're not, are things to assess? Like what would be your guidance?
I mean, I guess baby steps, first step, get enough rest. Like if you're exhausted, you have to change something somehow, some way,
Yep.
So stop being exhausted. That would be the first step.
Yes, step one.
Probably easier said than done.
Yeah.
Second baby step, nourish yourself. You have to eat well because your body is made up of everything that you put in it. This is what your energy is made from the life force of the food. Your physical body is made from the physical things in the food. And so, eat food that is full of life, go to the store, eat produce that feels full of life. And that's going to also support your life force.
Yep.
So obviously, if you can eat local, well, that's amazing because you're not eating food that's been shipped across the country. But, if you just eat a lot of produce that looks really healthy and alive, well, that's good too. Like the farther away you get from life and being alive and processed and shelf food, the less life force that you're going to get from your food.
Absolutely.
So those are just like super baseline. And then I guess the next level would be connectability, so connecting to yourself, connecting to your body, connecting to your partner, connecting to people in your life, connecting to your life. It's like, it's so easy when you're like running, going to forget that connection piece of just to like slow down, breathe. What do I need?
That's a great, and if you have more, I want to hear more. I just want to connect on that piece that you just said. That connectivity piece is very real because I know for a number of women that I've talked to as well, there is sort of, I think the infertility piece can be very isolating for a lot of women.
Yeah.
And as a result, they sort of isolate themselves from life in general. They sort of box themselves in. And even if they're not going to women's support groups for this particular thing, them getting out and doing like a painting class and just connecting with people seems to sort of circulate things in the right direction. Women that I know have had huge shifts in just expanding their social circles and just seeing more people and just essentially interacting with living people. That's sort of, that thing seems to be very real and powerful.
Yeah, it's a human need.
Yeah.
Like it's an essential human need.
We need people. Yeah.
We need people. We need connectability, both with ourselves and with other people. And there's something nourishing and life-giving in that piece. And also, when we connect to ourselves, like, oh, wow, things are really terrible right now. I feel full of like pain and shame and frustration and all of those things. And so it's hard to feel that, but it's like, it gives you that sense on the radio.
Oop, I lost your sound. Oh, I lost you. Weird. Yeah, totally lost. Oh, there you're back.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So something happened. I don't know what.
Yeah, that was strange. Yeah, so it's just giving a beat on yourself of like okay, something needs to shift. And yeah, connecting with other people, especially women connecting with other women seems to be really important. I don't know about from the man's standpoint, but being a woman, it's super important to be able to connect with other women, especially when you're feeling frustrating with being a woman. And, you know, like a lot of women start feeling like they are able to be a woman, you know, if they can't give birth. And so, you know, there's a lot of like internal issues that come up around this, and something about the connectability in a way that feels good and safe and supportive and alive starts to help that to flow again, you know, and you're a person and your value isn't wrapped up in what you do and what you produce and how many babies you make. It's like who you are as a human isn't about all of that stuff. And sometimes being able to connect into ourselves, like, why am I alive? You know, why am I here?
Absolutely.
But like, it's, you know, we need that space to be able to reconnect with what does it mean to be a human and why am I here, you know? And in my meditation practice, like I've discovered that a lot of times humans live in this really small bandwidth of experience, and what we're capable of humans is so big and so vast. Yeah. And you know, the reason I do meditation is to connect to all of the spaces of consciousness and that wide range of potential and possibility that we have as a human. And I think it's so important, you know, like, to reconnect with that in yourself. Why are we here? And yeah, so those would be the first 3 steps, because, you know, that's the baseline to just get yourself to feeling healthy and okay. And
it's huge.
Know, and then from there,
keep going.
You can start doing the sexuality practices, you know, but it's like, it's hard to even want to cultivate your sexual energy and your Jing and all of that stuff when you're in pain and you're exhausted and you know you're frustrated and you're running the hamster wheel. And so it's like there has to be some sort of slowing down, reconnection, as well as giving yourself the proper food and rest that you need. And then you can start with the piece around, you know, cultivating your life and longevity and vitality.
Yeah, and sort of metaphorically, it sounds like you're like, these are like the places where we seal the leaks first, right? We've got to like seal up the leaks before we start filling the tub or the well back up.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like seal things so that you're not leaking all the time, because most of us are, right? Except we're all leaking to a degree, right? Like we're all slowly dying, but I mean, there's that larger piece of like, you don't want to leak so fast that you just don't have any oomph and juice and vitality for your day-to-day living and for your larger, you know, purpose in life. So, well, Corinne, those are great. Thank you for all of that information and for jumping in on this topic, because I think it's one, like I think it's applicable to everybody, and I think it's a message that people need to hear. It's important, and it's a framework that I think we all need to kind of, just not burn out, because everyone's doing it, right? We live in America, and everyone is prone to burnout in some capacity. It's pretty easy to do it, that's for sure.
It is. And I think people want to feel healthy and alive, full of life, and creatively satisfied. Whether that's creating a baby or creating, you know, your life's purpose. So.
Right. We all want to feel good. Well, Corinne, thank you for doing this. And if people want to find you, follow you, kind of see what you're doing, what are the best places to do that?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
So my website is dragonblossomhealing.com.
Okay.
And you can email me at cw@dragonblossomhealing.com.
Okay.
Instagram is @dragonblossomfertility. And then I have a Facebook group called Reclaiming Feminine Wisdom. It's a closed group, but, you know, just request and I'll accept you. So we talk a lot about the reclamation of feminine wisdom and just a safe space for women to explore and express themselves.
Yep.
And at some point I am going to create some online courses. So that's in the very beginning, more of the idea stage, but excited to put that out. And so like would love for you to connect with me. I would love to explore more of these topics with you. Yeah. If you're interested in a course at some point, I think, I'm definitely going to have sexual energy, cultivating sexual energy as a part of that. So
cool.
Yeah, would love to hear from you and reach out if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, again, Corinne, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.